and what you were working on was Sacred Games. And Sacred Games, just for those of us who need a reminder, that actually in the end published in 2006, and it, like you said, it's one of those that might attract that horrible phrase that you don't like about transcending genre and stuff, because it does on the surface look like it's coming out of some very like hard-boiled genre, but it just absolutely once again launched a great literary acclaim with the Hutch Crossword Award for English Fiction. You won a Salon Book Award. You were a finalist in the National Book Critics Circle Award for Fiction. You made it onto many, many best of years lists. So I was wondering, did you, when you write, you were saying that when you write, you always start with like a few images and you don't know where they come from, and you know that they're gonna like kind of power the book. Do you start with voice? Like does voice come to you, like the voice of the book? Do you think that you have a voice that you carry from one book to another, as some authors do, or do you think your voice is very particular to the book, that it's the book's voice? And that's part one of my question. Part two of the question is, how much do you try to control that? So you've said, I kind of jumped ahead, I didn't know this at the time I wrote this question, but that you really don't pay that much attention to genre. So I was going to ask, like, do you feel like you have to modulate your voice for genre, like that you want it to sound more literary, so you're writing in this way, or you want it to sound faster paced and more like it's going to make a Netflix series, so you're going to write it in a certain different way? Like, how does voice play in with you? What's your
I
relationship?
mean, it comes out of the book, the fiction that I'm working on. And again, I don't really care about, I mean, I can't do it, right? About modulating what you're writing for in fiction. I mean, I can't even imagine, like, what does that mean, right, for me? And a larger audience is hard for me to imagine in my head, right? And what am I talking about? Like English speakers in India, right? That's like many, many millions of people, even though it's a language spoken by a minority of the population. So I can't, so like I said, I'm writing to a particular small group of imaginary people in my head. And then I discover the way that language will work as I start working on the fiction itself. And at least in the first few drafts, I feel like I have very little control, right? Because the language is emerging, the form is emerging, and then it's only later in revision that I can start shaping its architecture. And then I mean, every day when I write, I'm aware of rhythm and form and sound of language. And I pay deep attention, but it seems to me that refining that takes many revisions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes any sense. So, I mean, I hope I'm not sounding too mystical, but this is how it works for me.
Yeah.
It's an internal process that then comes out and meets the world on the page, first in a small way and then in a larger way. Right?
And so just for staying one more second with process, like, so how, obviously you work in a very iterative way. Do you, and it doesn't sound to me like that you work with like that you let the novel grow. You don't work with any like outside structures, like you don't plot in advance or anything like that. How much iteration do you kind of set yourself up for from the beginning? Like, are you expecting to write like 20 drafts or 4 drafts, or?
It's endless. I mean, I know. I mean, oh, sorry, my phone is talking to me. Oh, I must have said something close to the name for the assistant.
Yes.
So I thought I was speaking to it. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember. I know for Sacred Games, it was closed by the time that the final page proof went off. Corrected page proof went off to the publishers. I think it was like 20 drafts, right? Which is not to say 20 complete rewrites, but just so the first rewrites, the first revisions work, I think, more on a macro level. So I'm cutting away big chunks of prose. which are there because I wrote in one direction and then realized they weren't going anywhere, and I changed direction midway. And deleting text, like paragraphs of text, and at the same time trying to work on sentences, right? But I'm thinking a lot about plot and so forth. And then as they go on, the architecture settles into place, right? And I find that I'm doing smaller and smaller scale revisions. And at some point, it seems to kind of settle down, and I have a feeling of, it's never ending, right? You could spend like 10 years refining stuff. But then I just send it to Eric, my agent, and then see what he thinks and whether it's ready to send on. But yeah, in the, like, for Sacred Games, again, to bring it back to image, so Sartaj Singh, who's one of the protagonists of Sacred Games, is a cop who had shown up in one short story in the prior book. So I knew him, but so I had this image that he's in a suburb of Bombay, and he's outside this strange bunker-like house talking to this very famous gangster over an intercom, right? But I had no idea who the gangster was or why he was there, right? And then, like, I start getting to know the characters, where they come from, what their backstory is, as I'm writing forward, right? So I do know people who have the architecture of the whole book, and they know where it ends before they actually start writing the prose, right? So they do all their brainstorming before, and I'm kind of envious of them, because for me it's like just like this sort of going forward, right? And E.L. Doctorow once said that for him, writing a novel was like driving at night. He could only see as far as the headlights lit the road, but didn't know what was after that. But if you drove far enough, you would get to the end, to the destination, right? So that's what it feels like to me.
I'm going to take courage from that, because I'm stuck in a big rewrite myself. It's okay that you can't see where it goes. So I know that there's going to be so many more questions about Sacred Games and the novel to Netflix experience, but I want to leave everybody like sufficient time. And if I stopped right now, they'd have 20 minutes. So I'm just going to grab one more question out of this that I want to ask, that actually hasn't got to do with your writing. It has got to do with the other side of you. Because one thing that I didn't get a chance to mention was that in 2013, you actually released a fourth book, which was nonfiction. It has three English titles depending on where in the world you are, but it's either Mirrored Mind, My Life in Letters and Code, or Geek Sublime, Writing Fiction, or just Geek Sublime. Or here in the USA, it was released as Geek Sublime, The Beauty of Code, The Code of Beauty, which astounds me, because it means that in all this time, and actually in all the very short time that we've been talking about, you'd written and published these novels, you wrote your short stories, you co-wrote a movie, you're like doing a lot, and you were teaching, and somehow at the same time you had time to be a coding geek, apparently. And so one of the outcomes of this, I think, is that you are in addition to being an author and a writing teacher for UC Berkeley, you are the CEO of a software company called Grantica. Am I
yeah,
right?
that's right, yeah.
And your marketing copy says that, let's see, your marketing copy says, and I'm going to quote here, that Grantica is a revolutionary semantic editor for professional and aspiring writers that allows writers to create knowledge as they write and to attach semantics to the text that they create. And so your audience, your market are writers. When I asked you before coming on here, Vikram, is there anything that you want to promote when you speak to us today? You said, oh, no, absolutely not. I'm just here to chat, which was very generous of you. And but my little marketing hat went, wait a minute, why isn't he promoting this? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to tell these writers here, supposed to carry something of them, why should they use Grantica? What does it do, and why is it so cool?
So the problem that I was trying to solve for myself is that, like everybody else, I used traditional word processors, like first WordPerfect, which was amazing, and then Microsoft Word. And we all build worlds, right? We have characters and events and locations and so forth. So I do a lot of research, but I think all of us need try and do that, right? We are building worlds and trying to remember information about characters. So when I was writing, I would suddenly think, okay, I need to go and find some note that I took about this character 4 years ago, right? And it's somewhere on my hard disk in a Word document or in my note-taking, Evernote or something like that. And I can spend like 45 minutes searching for that damn thing, right? So what we wanted to do was to build a tool where the writing tool and the world building tools were all in the same place, right? So when you're writing in Granthika, if you want to know more about, you're trying to remember what color John's eyes were, right? Which is harder, as everyone here knows, than one would think. You can just click on John's name in the text, right, in your manuscript, and it'll jump over to John's page, right, where you've stored all your information, and then with one click you can jump back, right? So I write in that every day, and it makes my life a lot easier, right? I'm not spending all my time trying to retrieve information. I'm just able to concentrate on my writing and be able to see the information that I've stored as I've been writing. Right?
So do you how do you populate these like buckets of information?
Oh, so there's like, if you go look at it, there's a tab across the top that says characters, locations, objects, and events, right? So if I'm writing, and I'm Conan Doyle writing the Sherlock Holmes stories, and I want to write about the pipe and the type of pipe it is, I click on objects and I just create it, right? I say create object, and I say Sherlock's pipe, and it's of this type. It was manufactured by this person. And then when I'm writing, I can attach the word Sherlock pipe to that page of information. So you're doing world building and writing manuscript at the same time, right? And linking this information. So just imagine it as like a kind of network of knowledge, right? You can jump from one place to the other, and then like if you can say what chapters is the pipe used in, right? And it lets you see that, right? All know the problem, like if I'm searching, right, for a character named, I don't know, Mark, right? In Word, if I want to see where everywhere where Mark is mentioned, I do a search, right? And then let's suppose I'm writing a war novel. I'll find the Mark II tank from the Panzer Company or something, right? So it becomes really frustrating. So like, again, it makes life easier if you're able to do this kind of knowledge, linking knowledge to text, right?
And you're offering a free trial?
Yeah, absolutely. Just go get it. You can download an app to your desktop. You can start writing on the web straight away. And I mean, at this point, I would say just start writing on the web, at least to try it out, right? Because it's so easy. You don't have to download anything, install anything.
And so one thing that has worried people before when we've talked to other, authoring software people is where does my manuscript live?
If you do the downloaded version, it'll live on your hard disk.
Okay.
Right. But like we discovered as we were writing this is that the kids nowadays, like they're so used to Google Docs and so forth, they don't even know that things can live on their hard disk. My elder kid, my daughter, is like, if she wanted to use Final Draft, she started writing screenplays. And like I was like, you can like actually store it, because to them everything's on the web, right?
Right.
And they're not paranoid at all, amazingly, about this kind of stuff.
Yes, they're a lot less worried than we are.